Okay, thank you everybody for attending our press conference today in such short notice. There are just a few things I would like to point out. We would have Mr. Tundu Lisu, who is the deputy chairman of the largest opposition party in Tanzania, Chadema, and he was also their presidential candidate for the elections 2020. We are also waiting for Mr. ZITTO, who is the party leader of ACT Wazalendo in Tanzania, also from the opposition party. I think he will join us shortly. So we will start with Tundu, but in the end, you will all have a chance to ask questions. Please introduce yourself and name the network you're with. Thank you and welcome. Go ahead, Mr. Tundu.
Thank you very much, Naj. Dear members of the press from around the world, greetings from a rather chilly Tienen in the Flemish Brabant, my home away from home for nearly 3 years now. Since my enforced return to Belgium, this time as essentially an exile rather than a medical evacuee, I have spoken to numerous members of the international press and media outlets individually. This is the first time I'm speaking collectively to the international press on a conference call. It is about the fraudulent election of 28th October in Tanzania and its aftermath. As you all know, I had the privilege of bearing my party Chadema's standard for providing the role of the whole people in that election. The central question that I seek to address in this conference call is, where do we go from here? At the very least, millions of Tanzanians went to the polls that day expecting to not only vote, but to have their votes counted and count in the shaping of the destiny of their country. What happened instead made a mockery of the people's legitimate expectations and dashed their democratic aspirations. What had started 2 months earlier with the mass disqualification of opposition candidates organized by the National Electoral Commission and the Zanzibar Electoral Commission and aided and abetted by the national security apparatus turned into an outright capture of the election by the armed forces working in tandem with the National Electoral Commission and Zanzibar Electoral Commission officials, armed vigilante gangs, local administration personnel, and CCM operatives. As a result of that capture, tens of thousands of the opposition polling agents were turned away from or kicked out of polling stations up and down the country. Altogether, more than 70,000 Chadema polling agents, roughly 88% of the total countrywide, were either totally barred from more than 80,000 polling stations across the country, or having entered, were eventually kicked out therefrom. In their absence, personnel from the army, police, militiamen, and polling supervisors and their assistants placed ballot boxes stuffed with pre-marked ballots in favor of the CCM candidates, especially John Pombe Magufuli, its presidential contestant. So blatant was this form of rigging that its perpetrators did not attempt to hide it, even from the few international observers invited and present, as members of the Africa Union Observer Mission informed us after witnessing ballot boxes overflowing with ballots even before voting started in one particular polling station. Elsewhere, police officers, army personnel, or polling supervisors entered polling stations with their pockets or rucksacks brimming with pre-marked ballots, as was captured in one video footage taken by an amateur photographer and widely shared in social media chat groups. In yet other instances, where voter turnout was especially low, polling supervisors and their assistants increased the number of CCM votes by marking the ballots where there were no voters present in polling stations and stuffed them into ballot boxes. In the very few areas where these forms of voting fraud could not be practiced because opposition members or candidates were more vigilant, returning officers simply changed the poll results and declared CCM candidates winners, with resultant protests violently snuffed out by paramilitary security forces and armed vigilante gangs. Many people were killed and many more wounded as the paramilitary state security forces ran amok, shooting, tear gassing, and beating anyone in their path. Hundreds have been arrested and dozens charged with leading organized crime, a non-bailable offense intended for economic offenders under the country's 1984 economic crimes legislation. The inevitable and intended consequence of this organized electoral thuggery is clear to all. An 84% electoral victory for Magufuli and 99.7% for his CCM parliamentary and local government council candidates. A steadily growing democracy prior to Magufuli's ascent to power in 2015, Tanzania has since taken a violent lurch backwards, culminating in the fraud of 28th October. Now, with this fraud, the country has been transformed into a virtual one-party state, at least in parliamentary terms. It is an understatement to say that the vast majority of our people, members of the political opposition and non-members alike, are hugely disappointed by the violent thuggery perpetrated on the nation by the Magufuli regime on 28 October. Many are justifiably angry, while some will be demoralized and discouraged from participating in future elections. Our party, Chadema, and our sister party, ACT Wazalendo, have refused to recognize the results of this fraudulent election. We have rejected any participation in parliament or in local government authorities, as to do so would be tantamount to accepting the results of this travesty of democracy. While disappointment, anger, or demoralization are perfectly understandable under these circumstances, this is not the time for our members, supporters, and the people generally to throw their arms up in despair. It is not the time to give up the struggle for democracy. CCM and Magufuli did not win any election, nor did Chadema and I lose one. Instead, the many millions of Tanzanians who flocked to polling stations across the country did not have their votes counted or made to count. As Samia Suluhu Hassan, Magufuli's running mate, told voters in a campaign rally prior to 28th October, CCM would rule the country regardless of whether it is voted for or not. Each one of us, party leaders, candidates, campaign teams, and supporting staff fought the good fight, and we fought it well. We faced and overcame considerable difficulties during the campaign. We battled against an entrenched, powerful, and well-resourced enemy who had all the apparatus and resources of the state at his disposal. With few exceptions, we faced police obstruction or violence and interference by National Electoral Commission and by the political administrative machinery of the local and regional administration. We campaigned with shamefully limited media coverage and still less material and financial resources. Yet, despite these near insurmountable challenges, we did not only persevere, we routed CCM and its candidates before the court of the people. Despite the lies, the defamation, and the mudslinging, the people faithfully and solidly stood behind us and our banner of freedom, justice, and people-centered development. The people turned up in their millions to welcome us to their areas, to listen and to have a national conversation with us. They contributed financially and materially to ensure we prosecuted and completed the grueling election campaign. Truly, they were the lions, the lionesses, and the cubs of this entire campaign. With the whole people behind us so solidly, our cause could not and cannot be lost. While believing in a just God helping our just cause, we cannot wait for divine intervention to see us through. As Barack Obama suggests in his latest memoirs, we must worry that a belief in destiny encourages resignation in the down and out and complacency among the powerful. We can ill afford either the resignation of our people or their complacency. What we must do then is to work very hard, very diligently, and very patiently. Above all, we must ensure that the unity and support of our people is secured and consolidated. To do so, we must see to it that the unity of the party, sorry about that. Just a minute. Sorry about that. Now I can continue, I'm sorry. Above all, we must ensure that the unity and support of our people is secured and consolidated. To do so, we must see to it that the unity of the party, its leadership, and of the rank and file is maintained and consolidated. We must rebuild and reinforce our party organization through Chadema Msingi, which has served us so well during the past 5 years of terrible repression and violence by the Magufuli regime. Internal party democracy must be protected and strengthened. Party discipline must be strictly but fairly enforced. After stealing this election so blatantly, and given his record of the first 5 years, Magufuli can offer nothing to us but what Sir Winston Churchill referred to as blood, toil, and tears. He can only maintain his grip on power through force, violence, and repression, particularly against our leaders, members, and supporters. Much will therefore be demanded of each one of us. We must brace ourselves for the very difficult and bitter days ahead. We must ensure that the political prisoners currently languishing in the various jails of the dictatorship and those to come, and their families get the moral and material support that they need and deserve. Unlike the biblical Cain, we must all be our brothers and sisters' keeper. So, While hoping for the best, we must prepare for the worst that will surely come given the nature of this obnoxious regime. I want to conclude my opening remarks on a more positive and hopeful note. We are not alone in this struggle. We have many friends and allies in the Great Lakes region, on the continent, and in the international community. We have the sympathy of the world. The regime is, on the other hand, isolated within the region and internationally. As spotlight by the international media and human rights groups worldwide has increased, so have its crimes stood exposed to the world. What we have just seen with the debate in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament is just the beginning. More is yet to come, with filings in the International Criminal Court, congressional hearings in the United States, and actions in bilateral and multilateral institutions in the offing or mooted. In these international actions, we are asking the international community to hold the Magufuli regime, its leaders and high officials, and its financial and other enablers accountable for human rights abuses and crimes against humanity. We are asking national governments and international organizations to impose targeted sanctions, asset freezes, travel bans, and such measures as are necessary to put an end to the impunity that has characterized the regime. Those who subvert democracy, abuse the rights of their people, and commit crimes against humanity should never have any hiding place anywhere in the community of nations. Rather, their crimes should be exposed to the world, denounced everywhere, and severely punished. The combination of internal resistance and mass democratic action with international solidarity will assure victory for our cause of freedom, justice, and people-centered development, and of democracy writ large. And so, to paraphrase Martin Luther King Jr., let us march together until we build a country that will not fear to do justice to her children. Let us march together to the land of freedom, justice, and people-centered development. Let's march together to a better Tanzania. I thank you all for your time, and I would love to answer your questions, if any.
Thank you very much. That was Tundu Lisu, Deputy Chairman of the opposition party Chadema in Tanzania, and also their presidential candidate of elections of this year, elections 2020. I think we would first proceed with ZITTO Kabwe, I think he's here, who is also the leader of another opposition party in Tanzania, ACT Wazalendo. Welcome, Mr. ZITTO.
Thank you so much, Natma. I share the statement that Tundu has just given, and I will be available if there will be any question that will be directed to me. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, then I think we're open up for questions and answers. You are welcome to take part. Please state your name and your network. Thank you.
Hello, if I might, can you hear me? Najma, this is Mam Tule from BBC.
Yes.
All right, I have two questions. One directly to Tundu, and then the second one will be to ZITTO. To Tundu, you've just asked from this statement, you've asked the international community, to sanction the government. You say you're going to file in the ICC and so on and so forth, but I hope you've heard the Minister for Foreign Affairs over the weekend saying that, they will choose dignity, and there are things that he called, in principle, things, differences in principle that, they will not compromise. So I don't know what you're going to make of that. you've said you're taking this route, but they are ready to defend themselves, as Minister Kabudi said over the weekend. That is one for Lisu. For ZITTO, you are the party chairman, party leader, sorry, for ACT Wazalendo, and as of now, you are still denouncing the election results. But we understand Zanzibar President Hussein Mwinyi has sent a letter to your party in forming the cabinet or government of national unity, and your party is on record saying that they've received the letter and you will hold internal meetings. So if you are denouncing the election, why have you received the letter, and what is it that you're going to discuss, if at all, that you're denouncing the election results? Thank you. That's it from me.
We will take another 2 questions first.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm Emmanuel. I'm Emmanuel for Radio France International Swahili Service. My question to Tundu Lisu. You said the fight is not over yet, and yet you left the country, left your supporters, wondering if the fight is still on or is not yet over, as you said in your statement. And the second one for ZITTO, you are still in the country. Before Tundu Lisu left the country, you called for demonstration, which of course never happened. So what is the next plan for the fight that you are all speaking about? Thank you.
Thank you. One more question, and then we will let Mr. Lisu and Mr. Lisu answer these first 3 questions. Anybody else?
Yeah, please. Hello?
Christopher, yes, go ahead.
Oh, my name is Christopher Kidanka from the East African newspaper. Opposition, this question goes to both Tundu Lisu and ZITTO Kabwe. We know that the people of Tanzania have never ever responded to a call for demonstration since the multi-party politics began. Do you take this as that the citizens are not ready to join you in the fight, to maybe to sacrifice their time and everything? So it's like you are alone. How do you take this?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Can I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. All these are very good questions. I will start with the first from the BBC about the statement given by Professor Palamagamba Kabudi that the government of the Magufuli's regime will choose dignity and will not compromise. Those who kill innocent civilians, those who use security forces and the administrative machinery to steal elections, those who commit human rights abuses and crimes against humanity have no dignity to fight for or protect. The Magufuli regime stands accused of serious human rights abuses, of crimes against humanity, of stealing the elections using the army, the police, the intelligence and security service, and the administrative apparatus. And these crimes will be denounced to the world and they will be punished. There is no dignity to protect or defend there. It is as simple as that. Criminals, even those wielding state power, have no dignity to defend. And therefore, that statement will not faze us. We continue with the struggle. We will tell the world what this regime has committed, the kind of crimes it has committed against the people of Tanzania. With regard to the question from Emmanuel, Radio France International, that the fight is not over yet, but I'm already in exile. My response is very simple. You have to live in order to fight the next day. And if your life is in danger, you cannot be suicidal, lose your life in the process, and that is the end of your story. You have to protect your life in order to be able to continue the struggle. And that is precisely what I have done. And what I have done has been done literally by every freedom fighter, by every fighter for democracy, for justice, and for rights everywhere. If we use, I would like just to point out one very simple example. The ANC, the ruling party in South Africa, was for 30 years a banned organization. And its leadership, Oliver Tambo, Thabo Mbeki, and thousands of others went in exile, spent decades in exile while continuing the struggle. And that has always been the case in these kinds of situations. And therefore, my being in exile does not preclude me from continuing with the struggle from where I am. As long as I'm alive, the struggle continues. The third question from Christopher Kidanka of the East African, that the people of Tanzania have never ever responded to calls for demonstrations. I think, no, my brother Christopher, you need to check your history again. In 2001, 19 years ago, the people of Zanzibar responded to calls for mass action. And as a result, dozens were murdered by the security forces of the government of the United Republic of Tanzania. Only 3 weeks ago, only last month, in the first 2 days of this fraud of an election, dozens of people were killed while demonstrating. So to say that the people of Tanzania have never responded to calls for demonstration is to exhibit an ignorance of our history that I find strange. Our people have responded to demonstrations in the past. They will respond to calls for mass action in the future. They may not have done it this time as we wished it to happen. That is true. But that is not to say that they will never respond to call for mass action to protect their rights. Thank you.
I would like to start from where Lisu left. Do you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I would like to start where Lisu left from the questions. One, I would also like to remind Kidanka on the 2011 demonstrations and the killings in Arusha. I'm sure 9 years ago is not very far as compared to 18 years ago example that Tundu gave. But also after the Arusha killings, where 5 people were killed. Then, when I was still in Chadema, we had a number of demonstrations in 8 different zones of the country. And people were demonstrating, and the police did not cause any problem. So it is not true that Tanzanians haven't heeded to the call for mass action. They have several times, not only by the opposition, but also by other organizations. I remember when I was at the university and there was a war in Iraq, and we called for a demonstration that ended in Jangwani, where the late Professor Harub Othman, Issa Shivji, Dr. Loitama addressed the rally, and it was organized by students at the University of Dar es Salaam by the time I was a student leader, and people turned up to demonstrate against the war in Iraq. I led a demonstration in 2001 against the World Bank and IMF policies under the umbrella of TGNP and FEMO then. And people turned up. Of course, we were arrested. So it is not true that Tanzanians never heed to the call for demonstration. What is true is that this regime, the Magufuli regime, is ready to kill people if they turn out to demonstrate peacefully, as what we have witnessed. And people have the right to defend themselves. And on the 2nd of November, the number of security forces which were in the areas where we were supposed to congregate and demonstrate were massive. In Ubungo and Burundi, massive. And for sure, under those environments, people have to protect in order to be able to continue the struggle. So it is not true. So the question, maybe you should reframe between 2016 and now, and not since the introduction of multi-party politics in Tanzania. The question from Emmanuel, which was very well responded by Tundu. This struggle, and I would like to use Nkrumah's quote. Nkrumah has a say, one struggle, many fronts. This struggle has to be fought from different fronts. And the international front is very, very, very important. And Lisu gave a very good example of the people like Oliver Tambo and the likes. And there are people who remained in South Africa, the Winnies and the likes. Some of them were imprisoned, like Mandela and Sisulu and the likes. But the work of Oliver Tambo and Becky and others who were in Lusaka or in Dar es Salaam, the Hanis and the likes, was so important in the struggle. So this has to be interpreted as part of the struggle, and all of us should be able to understand that part of history, as Lisu just briefed us. On Mtulia's question regarding the government of national unity in Zanzibar, one, it has to be well understood that the different from the constitution of the mainland, the constitution of Zanzibar elaborates or describes for the government of national unity. The question here is that government of national unity should be formed under a free, fair, and credible election results. And what we are questioning now is the whole exercise of the election. And it is very clear to us as a party that there was no election in Zanzibar. If I trim it to the Zanzibar question, there was no election. And this has been clearly said by the party chairperson and by myself as the party leader. So why did we receive the letter? Why not? Because the letter has been sent and the letter was received. But the question should be, why didn't we send a name as requested? We did not send a name because we did not recognize the election. And as a party, we have the internal democratic processes for the party structures to make the final decision. The preliminary decision has been made that we don't recognize the election, so we don't recognize the results of that election. But the party formal communication will come out. And as you know, all of you, that Maalim Seif has been in the tour in both Unguja and Pemba, not only visiting people who have been affected by the atrocities committed against them pre, during, and past election, but also conducting consultations within the party structures that will enable us to give out a formal decisions after the party central committee meeting and possibly national executive committee meeting of the party. So as it stands, ACT doesn't recognize the election that took place in Zanzibar. And yes, as Maalim Seif said, we received the letter and the internal processes are going on.
Thank you very much. We have one question from Peter Elias from Wananchi. He's asking, what is the future of the opposition in Tanzania? It seems that there are plans to destroy opposition once and for all. Do you have any plan B? What does the future hold for you? And please continue to ask questions directly. I'm multitasking, so I cannot read and do other things. So feel free to ask your questions directly.
I have one more question, if can you give it a chance, please? Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes, please, yes. Christopher.
Yes, I have one more question. Philosophically speaking, the psyche of Zanzibar opposition has been the same since multi-party politics was reintroduced in the archipelago. I want to say from the CUF hegemony there and now ACT. We know that after 2000 election, the Civic United Front did not recognize the administration there. But later they agreed to sit on the table, on the round table, which actually resulted into constitutional changes that allowed government of national unity. Question to my brother Zitto, is it possible, logically and politically maybe, for ACT Wazalendo, although it does not recognize the election results there, to sit on the table with CCM and discuss later on to come in a certain consensus that will be the best interest of the people of Zanzibar and United Republic in general? Is that possible? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Anybody else will take two more questions for now? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Naj. What is the plan B for the opposition now that it is clear that Magufuli wants to destroy the opposition, the political opposition? I think the answer to that is Magufuli will not succeed in destroying the political opposition. And the reason is very simple. The opposition is no longer confined to Chadema or to ACT Wazalendo only. The opposition has become generalized in the Tanzanian population, amongst the people of Tanzania. He may be able to deregister political parties, to remove the legal recognition, to prevent them from getting any assistance, subvention from the state, preventing them from entering parliament and so on and so forth. He may imprison, he may kill, he may exile. But the opposition now is in the breasts of millions of men and women of Tanzania. And as long as it is there, he will not be able to destroy it. The lessons of history are very important here. The ANC in South Africa was banned for 30 years. Its leaders were imprisoned for life. Dozens, hundreds were killed. Thousands were exiled. But the ANC remained in the hearts and minds of the millions of the South African people. And I can give examples of similar nature from other parts of the continent as well as of the world. So Magufuli, as I said in my opening remarks, the days, weeks and months ahead will be very difficult. They will be terrible because he has nothing to offer other than violence and repression. But we will survive him. The people of Tanzania will survive the Magufuli dictatorship. The opposition will get even stronger than it currently is, just as it grew stronger in the 5 years of terrible repression during the first 5 years of Magufuli. So no worries. He will hurt us. We'll get even stronger than we are currently.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zitto Kabwe.
Yeah, I'll have to respond to Kidanka. One, Zanzibar has a history of these aborted elections and discussions. You remember 1999 Mwafaka and Ameka Anyoku, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth then, and post-2000 elections, there were second Mwafaka that led to some improvements into the National Electoral Commission. 2005, the elections were in trouble once again, and 2009, Maalim Seif and Abeid Aman Karume, the then president of Zanzibar, Aman Abeid Aman Karume, the then president of Zanzibar, met and agreed on Maridhiano that led to the changes in the constitution. And after 2010 elections, which is on record one of the freest and fairest election in Zanzibar ever, then the government of national unity was formed, which lasted for 5 years. 2015, everybody knows that the election was nullified illegally, unconstitutionally, and the fresh elections were called, and the then leading opposition in Zanzibar, CUF, did not participate in those elections, and for 5 years, duly elected members of the House of Representatives did not participate at all into the House. And following the rerun of the elections, CCM took 100% of the seats in Zanzibar up to 2020 election. So we have examples of times where the negotiations were held, whether in terms of Mwafaka or Maridhiano, and then eventually the government of national unity been formed. But we have a very, very recent example where nothing happened. In 2015, 2020, nothing happened. And the opposition did not participate at all in the affairs of the governance in Zanzibar, whether in the House or in the local government authorities or in the central government as ministers and the likes. So now the election was aborted again. We were given some few seats, and our members haven't gone to take an oath because of the preliminary announcement that we made that we did not recognize those elections. And yes, as I said before, the letter was written. We responded to it. I mean, we responded to the public that we are holding the internal party discussions, and eventually will make a public statement. So I cannot say whether we will not or we will, because that depends on the processes within the party. But I've just given you two clear examples of the times that the opposition got involved and the time that we are not involved. And the Zanzibar issue is very pertinent to Zanzibaris, and our party have structures that allow the Zanzibaris to air their views through the internal party structures, including the special committee for Zanzibar, and then the central committee of the party will meet, the national executive committee of the party will meet, and then we will communicate publicly.
If I may add to that, I would really appreciate the chance.
Please.
Sure, go ahead.
Christopher asks if there is a philosophical possibility of reconciliation or compromise. And I think the answer to that is a definite yes. In the history of struggles such as this, compromise is not unknown. Compromise, negotiations, negotiated settlements are not strangers, are not strange things. If I may use the example of South Africa again, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and others in the ANC, even after terrible years of repression under apartheid South Africa, eventually sat down to negotiate with their oppressors. Ian Smith in Rhodesia and Robert Mugabe, after years of armed struggle. The list is long of negotiated settlements between bitterest of rivals, between the bitterest of enemies. The most important thing is to understand when, where, and how to sit down and negotiate with your enemy. And therefore, it should never occur to anybody to rule out compromise or negotiations when the conditions for that are right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand we also have our friends from Kenya. Anybody who would like to ask any questions, please, you're welcome.
Hello. Well, I'm from Kenya. Actually, maybe this will be my last question to Tundu Lisu. Are you planning any time soon to go back to your country, or as you're saying, we should look into history? We talk about a lot about ANC struggle when it was banned for almost over 30 years. Are you going to stay there for over 10 years, or you may be back soon in the country? And what about the charges that you are facing in Tanzania? Thank you.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
When do I plan to go back home to Tanzania? I have been here only 12 days. I have not even finished my mandatory 14 days quarantine for COVID-19. It is too premature. It is too early to say when I will return home to Tanzania. It will all depend on one important factor: guarantees and assurances about my safety and about my life. I did not run away from Tanzania lightly. I ran after police protection was removed And immediately after, I started receiving death threats. As you may know, I was arrested by the police. Dozens of police officers arrested me outside the compound that houses the British, German, Dutch, and the European Union diplomatic missions. So I did not run away lightly. I ran for my life. I am a survivor of 16 bullet hits in an assassination attempt 3 years ago. And a threat to life against me, I must take very, very seriously. So I will return to Tanzania when the conditions are right. And it is too early now to say when.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 5 more minutes before we end our conference. So you're still welcome to ask questions, if you please. Okay. Okay, then I would like, yes.
The Kenyan friend has asked about what happens to my cases. I forgot to answer that.
Yes, go ahead then.
Yeah.
The cases will have to wait. If they waited for 3 years, they can wait for some more. They can wait for my return home. The most important thing is I should be alive.
Well, Najma, before we close, actually, I remembered last week, Afman Tuli again from BBC, last week the IGP, Simon Lisu, said, he can assure you, he can guarantee your safety. So if you come back, you and Lema, he can arrange for your security. Are you aware of that? And does that suffice to be a guarantee?
I heard Inspector General of Police Simon Siro promise me that I'll be safe upon my return. But let me put the record straight. In December of last year, on 23rd December to be exact, we wrote a letter to the Inspector General of Police. I was still in Belgium. I hadn't returned home. We wrote to the IGP to inform him that I was ready to return home and that I needed security given the fact that of the assassination attempt. That letter was never responded to. We reminded him again in January of this year that I was ready to come home. I needed police protection. That reminder as well was not replied to. I decided to come home and to go home anyway. And once I made clear that I was going home anyway, the Inspector General of Police went public. And he said on public record that actually I would be arrested. I went home. A few weeks after my arrival home, he went on national television and stated that now the police had me in their hands, they were protecting me, and it's just a matter of time before they would arrest me. Now, this is somebody who was shot 16 times by people who the IGP claims are unidentified to date. No suspect, no arrest, nothing. This is the same IGP when before I was shot 16 times, I had requested for protection and he refused it publicly. I was shot 16 times. They recovered CCTV footage. They have covered it up. And I had protection during the election campaign. Soon after the election was rigged, police protection, which I already had, was removed. And the next day, I started receiving death threats. Now, this is the same police chief who now wants the world to believe him when he says that the police will protect me.
Sorry to cut you short, Lisu. Sorry to cut you short, Lisu. So what kind of guarantee? What kind of guarantee? I mean, that you need now, if you don't trust the IGP.
I need guarantees, including first of all, all those criminal charges that bogus criminal charges that were filed against me should be dropped unconditionally, number one. Number two, the police should tell the people who shot me 16 times. Where did the CCTV go? And what is the status of their investigations before they can tell me that I'm safe?